My wife, Hannah, has an identical twin sister, Lisa. I knew from the beginning that their bond was tight, almost unnervingly so. They finished each other's sentences, shared inside jokes that no one else could understand, and even switched places for pranks growing up. When I started dating Hannah, Lisa was always around. It was normal at first, twins after all, but over time, I noticed strange things. Lisa would stare at me a little too long when she thought I wasn't looking. She would ask odd questions about our relationship, like what made me fall for Hannah instead of her. I brushed it off as curiosity, maybe even jealousy, and didn't think much of it. Fast forward a few years. Hannah and I got married, and Lisa stayed a constant presence in our lives. She never dated seriously, always saying no one could compare to what she and Hannah had growing up. Again, weird, but I let it go. Then we had our son, Oliver. That's when things really started to unravel. Lisa was obsessed with him. I know aunts are supposed to love their nephews, but this was different. She would hold him for hours, sometimes even refusing to give him back when he cried for his mother. She knew things about him that we never told her, how he liked to be rocked a certain way, what kind of music soothed him best, little habits that only Hannah and I should have known. It got to the point where I had to set some boundaries. I told Hannah that Lisa needed to back off, that it wasn't normal for an aunt to act like a second mother. Hannah agreed, but she also defended her sister, saying Lisa was just attached because they had always dreamed of raising kids together. Then one night, Lisa made the claim that changed everything. We were at a family gathering when Lisa got tipsy and started talking about how motherhood had changed her. It was an odd thing to say, considering she didn't have kids, but everyone laughed it off. Then she looked me dead in the eye and said, "You do know Oliver's my son too, right?" I laughed. I thought it was another one of her weird twin jokes. She didn't laugh back. Instead, she looked at Hannah, who had gone pale. That was the moment I realized something was very, very wrong. The room went silent. I looked at Hannah, waiting for her to tell Lisa to stop joking, to roll her eyes and call her sister crazy. But she just stood there, gripping her wine glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. "Lisa," Hannah said finally, her voice barely above a whisper, "don't do this." "Don't do what?" Lisa shot back, her lips curling into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Tell the truth." A pit formed in my stomach. "What the hell are you talking about?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Lisa's eyes locked onto mine. "I'm Oliver's real mother." I heard a couple of gasps around the room. Someone awkwardly laughed, thinking this was some kind of bizarre joke. But I wasn't laughing. I turned to Hannah, waiting for her to deny it, to tell everyone Lisa was drunk and talking nonsense. But she didn't. She looked at me with tears in her eyes, her chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. Lisa took a step forward. "You deserve to know, Ethan. You were never supposed to find out like this, but it's the truth. I'm his real mother." I felt the blood drain from my face. "That's impossible," I said. "I was there when he was born. I saw Hannah pregnant. Lisa let out a bitter laugh. "Did you, though? Or did you just believe what you were told?" Something about the way she said it made my stomach turn. I turned to Hannah again, feeling like the floor beneath me was shifting. "Tell me this is a lie," I begged. Hannah finally spoke. "Ethan, She shook her head, blinking rapidly as tears slid down her cheeks. That was all I needed to see. I staggered back, my mind racing. The room around me felt too bright, too loud, and too quiet all at once. "Oliver is my son," I said slowly, trying to ground myself. "Mine and yours." I looked at Lisa, my voice turning ice cold. "You're his aunt, not his mother." What kind of sick joke is this? Lisa crossed her arms. "You really think that, huh? That you and Hannah made him together?" She let out a short laugh. "God, you're so naive." Something inside me snapped. "Then explain it," I growled. "Right now." Lisa's lips curled, like she had been waiting for this moment. "Hannah couldn't carry a baby," she said. We knew it for years. So we made a deal. Our baby, but I would carry him. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I turned to Hannah, desperate for her to contradict Lisa, to tell me this was some kind of twisted prank. But she just stood there, eyes brimming with guilt. Lisa smirked. Surprise. The world blurred around me. My ears were ringing, my chest tight. I turned back to Hannah, still clinging to some shred of hope that this was all a horrible misunderstanding. Hannah, I said, my voice barely my own. Tell me she's lying. Her lips trembled. She swallowed hard. Ethan, I was going to tell you. I staggered back like she had slapped me. You were going to tell me? I repeated, my voice hollow. When? After he turned 18? After Lisa showed up one day demanding custody? When was I going to find out that my wife let her sister carry my child without telling me? Hannah flinched, but Lisa was the one who stepped forward, shaking her head with something close to amusement. Oh, Ethan, she said, tilting her head. You still don't get it. My hands clenched into fists. Get what? Lisa's eyes flicked to Hannah, then back to me. I didn't just carry Oliver, she said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. He's mine. Biologically. The air was sucked from my lungs. No, I breathed. That's not possible. Lisa's smirk grew. It is. You and I made Oliver, Ethan. The world tilted. My vision darkened at the edges. No, I whispered again. I turned to Hannah, desperate for her to call Lisa a liar, to say this was all some delusion. But she didn't. Instead, fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. I'm so sorry, she choked out. My legs nearly gave out beneath me. I stumbled back, gripping the edge of the table for support. My mind was scrambling, searching for any way this could be false. But deep down I knew. Hannah had never been pregnant. Lisa had been. Lisa wasn't just Oliver's aunt. She was his mother, and I had never known. I couldn't breathe. My entire world had just been ripped apart in front of an entire room of people. Family members were whispering, some staring at Hannah in shock, others looking at Lisa like she had lost her mind. But all I could hear was my own pulse pounding in my ears. I forced myself to look at Hannah again. Tell me she's lying, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Tell me this isn't what I think it is. Hannah wiped her face, shaking her head. I never wanted it to come out like this. I let out a bitter laugh. Oh, I'm sorry. How exactly was I supposed to find out? A deathbed confession? A letter hidden in a drawer? I was shaking now, my whole body burning with anger, betrayal, and something else I couldn't even name. Lisa, meanwhile, looked pleased with herself. She folded her arms and leaned against the counter like this was some kind of victory. I don't understand, I said, running a hand through my hair. You couldn't get pregnant? So what did you do? Find a surrogate? Why the hell wouldn't you just tell me? Hannah let out a choked sob. I wanted to, Ethan. I swear. But you always said you wanted a child that was ours. You wanted us to go through everything together. I thought if you knew I couldn't carry you, I was scared you'd leave. I stared at her in disbelief. So your solution was to let Lisa carry our child without telling me? Hannah flinched, but before she could say anything, Lisa scoffed. You're still not getting it, Ethan, she said. I am Oliver's biological mother. Hannah isn't. I felt like I'd been physically struck. I looked at Hannah. She didn't deny it. She just wiped her face with trembling hands and looked away. My voice was hoarse. You mean to tell me that you not only used a surrogate, but you used Lisa's egg? And you didn't tell me. Silence. My stomach twisted violently. So you have no biological connection to Oliver? She closed her eyes. No. I took a step back, shaking my head. My heart was hammering so fast it hurt. Lisa's smirk deepened. Now you're finally getting it. I turned to her, my breathing ragged. You knew. I said slowly, realization hitting me like ice water. You knew this whole time. Lisa shrugged. Of course I knew. It was my body, my pregnancy, my child. I felt like I was going to be sick. So let me get this straight, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Hannah couldn't carry a baby. You too decided, without telling me, that you would be the surrogate. But instead of using Hannah's egg, you used yours. Meaning Oliver is biologically yours and mine, not Hannah's. And you both hid this from me for years. Neither of them said a word. The room was dead silent. I turned back to Hannah, my wife, the woman I had built a life with, the woman I had trusted with everything. How could you do this to me? I asked, my voice breaking. Hannah looked at me, eyes full of regret. Because I love you. Because I was scared that if you knew, you wouldn't love me anymore. That you'd see me as broken. Tears burned in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Lisa, on the other hand, was looking at me with something far more unsettling. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't regret. It was triumph. And that's when I realized she didn't just say all of this out of guilt. She wanted me to know. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Why now, Lisa? I asked, my voice hollow. Why tell me now? Lisa's smirk widened. She took a step closer, lowering her voice just enough that only I could hear. Because Ethan, she whispered, it's time Oliver knows who his real mother is. Lisa's words sent a chill down my spine. I stepped back like I'd touched fire, my mind struggling to process what she had just said. What the hell does that mean? I asked, my voice sharp. Lisa tilted her head. It means exactly what it sounds like. She smiled, slow and deliberate. Oliver's getting older. He deserves to know the truth. To know me. Hannah stiffened. Lisa, we talked about this. I snapped my head toward Hannah. You talked about this? She closed her eyes briefly, like she regretted saying it. But the damage was done. Lisa's smirk grew. Of course we did. Did you really think this was going to stay buried forever? That I was just going to sit back and let you two raise my son without ever telling him? A cold, sick feeling settled in my stomach. I turned to Hannah, my voice shaking with barely restrained fury. When exactly were you planning to tell me that Lisa was pushing for this? Or were you going to hide that too? Hannah's face crumpled. Ethan, please. No, I took another step back, shaking my head. No more excuses. No more lies. You stole my right to know the truth about my own son. I turned to Lisa. And you, what exactly is your endgame here? You want to take him from us? Is that it? Lisa's smile faltered for a brief second before she recovered. I just want my son to know who I am. Is that so wrong? Yours, Aunt, I snapped. You're the one who agreed to this. You can't just change your mind because you feel like it. Lisa let out a low, bitter laugh. I agreed to this? Oh, Ethan, you still don't get it, do you? She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice just enough to make my skin crawl. This was never just about helping Hannah, she murmured. I wanted you to. My breath caught in my throat. Lisa's eyes gleamed with something dangerous. Hannah couldn't give you what you wanted, but I could. I did. And you never even knew. The world around me spun. I could hear the muffled murmurs of family members, the tense silence hanging in the air, but it all felt so far away. Lisa had never just done this for Hannah. She had done it for herself. And now she was telling me, right to my face, that she wasn't going to stay in the background anymore. Oliver wasn't just mine and Hannah's son. He was hers. And she wanted me to know it. I took a shaky breath, trying to steady myself. You're not taking him, I said, my voice low and deadly. I don't care what you think you're entitled to. You're not taking my son. Lisa's smirk didn't waver. We'll see about that. Hannah finally snapped. Lisa, stop, she cried. This isn't what we agreed on. Lisa turned to her sister, her expression darkening. I don't care what we agreed on anymore. I carried him. I gave birth to him. He's mine. Hannah looked at me desperate. Ethan, please, let's just talk about this. We can figure it out together. But I couldn't even look at her anymore. The woman I married had lied to me in the worst way imaginable. And now her sister, the woman who had my son, was making it very clear. She wasn't going away, and she was ready for a fight. I didn't sleep that night. After the disaster at the family gathering, I took Oliver and left. Hannah begged me not to, but I couldn't even look at her. Not after what she had done. I drove around for hours, trying to clear my head, until I ended up at a hotel. Oliver, thankfully, was too young to understand what was happening. He fell asleep in my arms as I stared blankly at the ceiling, my mind racing. Lisa wanted my son. Hannah had let this happen, and I had been completely blindsided. By morning, I had a decision to make. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for Lisa to make a move if she thought she could suddenly claim Oliver as hers. She was in for a fight. I needed a lawyer. I needed answers. And most of all, I needed to make sure Lisa didn't get anywhere near my son. I dropped Oliver off at my parents' house and told them everything, or at least as much as I could manage without completely losing my mind. My mom was horrified. My dad, who had always been quiet and level-headed, just sat there shaking his head in disbelief. "She lied to you, son," he finally said. "She didn't just keep a secret. She lied for years. How are you supposed to trust her again?" I didn't have an answer to that. Instead, I made the call to a lawyer. I explained everything as best as I could. My wife's infertility, the secret surrogacy, Lisa being the biological mother, and now her sudden insistence that Oliver was hers. The lawyer listened carefully, then let out a long sigh. "This is going to be messy," he admitted. "But legally, you're Oliver's father. Your name is on the birth certificate, and as far as the law is concerned, you have parental rights. Lisa, on the other hand," he paused, "if there was no legal agreement at the time stating she was a surrogate, and if she suddenly tries to claim parental rights now, she's going to have an uphill battle." I exhaled. That was something at least. "But," the lawyer continued, "you need to be prepared. If she decides to take this to court, she could push for a DNA test to prove her biological connection. If a judge is sympathetic, she could be granted visitation or even partial custody." A cold dread settled in my chest. "She's not getting near my son," I said firmly. The lawyer was quiet for a moment. "Then my advice? Get ahead of this. File for full custody before she makes a move. And if you're serious about keeping her away, you need to start documenting everything." I hung up feeling both relieved and terrified. I had a path forward, but it was going to be a battle. And Lisa wasn't the only problem. Hannah had been blowing up my phone all night and morning. Missed calls, texts, "Ethan, please talk to me. Come home. We can fix this. I made a mistake, but I love you." I ignored them all, until one message made my blood run cold. Lisa just showed up at the house asking where Oliver is. I told her I didn't know, but Ethan, she's not backing down. I think she's serious. I grabbed my keys. Lisa had just declared war, and I wasn't about to let her win. I drove back to the house, my heart pounding. I didn't know what Lisa was capable of, but I wasn't about to wait and find out. When I pulled into the driveway, she was already there, standing on the front porch, arguing with Hannah. Lisa's eyes snapped to me the second I got out of the car. "Where's Oliver?" she demanded. I ignored her and walked straight past her to Hannah. "Is she inside?" I asked. Hannah shook her head, looking exhausted. "She just showed up. I told her to leave, but she won't." Lisa let out a sharp laugh. "Wow, Hannah, after everything we've been through, you're just going to shut me out?" I turned to Lisa, my patience gone. "You need to leave. Now." Lisa's face darkened. "He's my son, Ethan. You can't keep him from me." "He's not your son," I snapped. "He's mine. I don't care if you carried him. You agreed to be a surrogate. You don't get to change your mind just because you feel like a mother. Lisa's hands clenched into fists. You don't get to erase me, she said, her voice shaking. I gave him life. I took a step closer, and I will fight with everything I have to make sure you never take him from me. For the first time, Lisa looked uncertain. I pressed on. I've already spoken to a lawyer. Legally, you don't have a claim. My name is on the birth certificate. I am Oliver's father, and if you try anything, I will take you to court and make sure you never see him again. Lisa's jaw tightened. You think you can just cut me out? I'll get a lawyer too. DNA doesn't lie, Ethan. A judge will see that I'm his real mother. You were an unofficial surrogate, I shot back. Without a contract, all a judge will see is that you knowingly gave him up at birth. No one forced you to do that. No one tricked you. You made a choice. And now, years later, you're trying to undo it. I shook my head. That's not how this works. Lisa opened her mouth, but I wasn't finished. You kept the secret for years, and now you suddenly care? No. This isn't about Oliver. This is about me. You wanted to take something from Hannah. Maybe you always did. But I don't love you, Lisa. I never have, and I never will. That hit her like a slap. Her face twisted with something between rage and pain. I cut her off. Go. Before I call the police. Lisa looked at Hannah like she was expecting her to step in, but Hannah just stood there, tears in her eyes, shaking her head. Lisa exhaled sharply, her hands trembling. Then, without another word, she turned and stormed down the driveway, getting into her car and speeding off. The moment she was gone, I let out a shaky breath. My entire body felt like it had been wound too tight. Hannah took a tentative step toward me. Ethan, I turned to her, and for the first time since this nightmare started, I didn't feel anger, just exhaustion. I can't do this, I said. Hannah's face crumpled. Ethan, please. I love you. I love Oliver. I know I made a mistake, but I thought. That's the problem, I interrupted. You thought you were protecting me, but you weren't. You were protecting yourself from the truth. And now, after all these years, I don't even know who you are anymore. Tears streamed down her face. Please don't do this. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I'm filing for full custody. Her breath hitched. You don't have to do that. We can still. I shook my head. It's over, Hannah. She let out a quiet sob, covering her mouth. But I didn't stay to comfort her. I walked inside, closing the door behind me, shutting out the sound of her crying. I sat down on the couch, my head in my hands. Lisa was gone. Hannah was gone. And now, all I had left was the one person who truly mattered, Oliver, and I would never let anyone take him from me again,